Welcome to As the Story Grows. I'm Brian Patton. Today I'm stoked to share my chat with Mike Maines from Mike Maines and the Branches. Mike's new record, Memory Unfixed, is out this Friday, September 15th via Tooth and Nail Records. Mike talks about the influence of radio in helping his band, capturing the human experience in song, fulfilling his dreams, the theology of hell, and more. This is honestly one of my favorite conversations I've had this year. I've been a fan of the Branches for a long time, and Memory Unfixed is an incredible record, so don't miss out. If you like As the Story Grows and wish there were more episodes, join the Patreon community where you get early access to every episode, oftentimes weeks before they're released to the general public. A link is in the show notes. Enjoy today's chat with Mike Maines. How's it going?
It's going great. Going great.
Awesome. Thanks for hanging out this morning.
Yeah, of course.
Yeah, nice. I have been listening to your band since I was one of those people who discovered you through Radio U and hearing stereo on Radio U.
Yeah, man.
So we go way back, man.
Dude, that's awesome. Thank you for listening all these years.
Yeah.
It's always encouraging when I hear folks that have been with us since like that era, because sometimes I wonder, I don't know if anyone still cares. So that's really encouraging.
Yeah. Sometimes you're like, put that era behind us too, right?
I felt that way for a while, and now I'm just grateful. I don't know.
Yeah.
And I think too, man, I mean, that's like 10 years and counting, maybe more. So I'm like, man, if we've been able to keep people interested for that long, hopefully I'm doing something right. I don't know.
Yeah, for sure. For sure. What led you guys to be on Radio U and then TVU?
I think we probably played like a festival in Ohio when we first started. And then I think someone that was a part of the network saw the band and then invited us to be on the show. And we've just, Nikki Cantu from Radio U was just an absolute angel. And she's somebody that I've stayed in really close contact with ever since the early days of Radio U. And I mean, anytime we're looking at going to radio outside of Radio U, I'm always asking for her advice. So she feels very much like a big sister to me. Nice. She's a really beautiful and kind person.
Nice. Yeah, they had like a lot of influence for a while where they could like put these smaller bands on the map who might otherwise go unnoticed.
Yeah, very much so. And radio is weird, but I'll say it. I mean, our biggest audience, like our biggest draw, if you will, is Columbus, Ohio, and it also happens to be where Radio U, one of their locations is, and they pump a lot of work into spreading awareness about the band. So radio works. Nice. You know, if you have people behind your band that really believe in it, radio changes everything. So I'm grateful for them.
Nice. Let's go back in time, man. Where'd you grow up?
Oh, man. Born in Denver, Colorado, and then primarily Michigan. My folks moved to Michigan and split up, I want to say around the time I was 4. Mm-hmm. Then I lived with my aunt and uncle until I was about 15. All around the state of Michigan, and predominantly like Battle Creek, Marshall, Michigan, which is like an hour and a half outside of Detroit. Mm-hmm. Graduated high school in northern Michigan in this tiny little farm town called McBain, Michigan. And And then I spent about a year in Texas from the time I was 21 until I was about 22, and that's where I started the band.
Nice. Nice. It sounds like it was quite a traumatic childhood, or
Oh yeah. I'm learning whether you grow up in this like perfect nuclear family or you have an upbringing like mine. Everybody has scars, and I think I'm learning to embrace them and be grateful for the healing process. You know.
Yeah. It definitely comes with age where you can find things to appreciate or just find things to overcome.
Yeah, I'm a big fan of Stoicism, and Ryan Holiday. He's got this book I just finished called "The Obstacle Is the Way," and so it's the whole idea that people that typically flourish greet adversity with a smile, as opposed to sort of wallowing in self-pity and wondering why this is happening to me, which is what I do still. But that idea, that concept of the obstacle is a way, or how can I use this painful experience that happened to me as fuel for the fire, and then redirect that energy into something constructive. It's really fun to talk about, and it's really hard to do.
Yeah, for sure. Well, what in all that in your childhood, like what got you into music?
I think the escapism of music. I wouldn't have called it that then. I didn't realize that I was disassociating from an otherwise really traumatic experience. But listening, one of my most, I would say, sacred memories and golden memories are the summers I spent in Coldwater, Michigan, on my grandmother Maxine's farm, and she was always listening to Johnny Cash and Dolly Parton while she was cooking breakfast in the morning, and she would always make sausage, biscuits, and gravy. And so I just have these vivid memories of her in the kitchen, Johnny Cash or George Strait or Garth Brooks or Dolly Parton or Willie Nelson kind of pouring out of the speakers in the kitchen, the scent of biscuits and gravy kind of filling the house. And those, I think the way that my grandma was just so kind and loving towards me, as well as those old country songs, that they just kind of took me somewhere else. It was almost like putting my head on a kite and letting it float up and blow into whatever new world the song was taking me. And I fell in love with it really, really quickly and never looked back.
Yeah. Is that what kind of drew you to guitar, and like, not that you're a singer-songwriter, but like being like a songwriter?
Yeah. Yes. Over the long term, it definitely was. I initially fell in love with drums. I'd always wanted to be a drummer. And then I had a teacher in fourth grade who was also a drummer. And at the end of the school year, I was always like tapping on my desk in class. And during my birthday that year, he had these drumsticks that he would play throughout the day, throughout the class. He would almost like use them as a teaching instruction for math, because he saw rhythm through the lens of mathematics, which I thought was interesting, because I still suck at math, but I was decent at drums. But he gave me his drumsticks, and that made a huge impression on me. It was like, I don't know, someone giving me a gold medal or something, or this like key that unlocks a door to my musical journey. And so I ended up, my dad wouldn't let me play drums in high school. Was super anti-music to begin with. He kind of had this like, you're going to be a farmer. And I was like, not a chance in hell, dude. So the school kind of knew about that, and the superintendent, principal, etc. But they kind of worked out this arrangement where they weren't going to tell my dad that I was in jazz band playing drums. And God bless the band director, Mr. Buckley, at the time, because I would get off the school bus in the mornings and bolt into the band room and set up this old 70s Ludwig and beat the absolute snot out of it. And this guy's, it's 7:15 in the morning, and I'm doing this right next door to his office, and he never complained. He was always so kind. And most of the students thought he was a jerk, but I don't know, maybe he just saw something in me or realized that music was my medication. And so he's really supportive. But so drums were my first love. And then 8th, 9th grade rolled around, and I was writing a lot of poetry. And then your high school is like publish poems in the state book or whatever. And I started winning a few different awards or prizes. And I think it was the end of my 8th grade year, I had to sing for this vocal choir class I was in, and my exam was to sing a song. I sang Drops of Jupiter, and everyone in the class said, dude, you've got an amazing voice. And so I was like, melody, poetry, words and melody? Okay. And then I was too intimidated to learn guitar, so I started with bass.
Okay.
And then when I was probably 15, 16 is when I started messing around and learning Nirvana songs and Blink-182 songs. And it was all secondhand because I had a buddy, Shane Roosevelt, who was like in proper guitar classes. So he would learn some really cool new song by Blink-182, and then I would learn it from him. And then I just started writing songs from there. And only now do I feel like I'm actually getting a proper musical education. Like I'm studying the piano and studying guitar and really seeking to become an excellent musician. I feel like my songwriting is here and my musicianship is down here. And as a producer, I feel like the best way I can serve the artists that I work with is being the best musician I can be as well. So that's a long-winded answer to your question, man.
Yeah, it works. What led to the formation of this band? Did it kind of form out of a solo project, or? Yeah,
let's see, when I was 19, so I'd kind of been on my own since around 15, 16. And after high school, I'd had a band that I started probably my 11th grade year of high school, and that fizzled out about a year after I was out of high school. I was really strung out on drugs and living a really kind of debaucherous, foolish lifestyle. It was essentially like overextended adolescence, welcome week at college, but every day of my life was welcome week. And I walked away from that band. I walked away from music. I walked away from everything. I gave away all my guitars and had this really kind of profound spiritual experience, got connected to this church in Owasso, Michigan, and didn't have anything to do with music for probably a year and a half. I was like, I'm going to be a preacher or something. Like I literally thought I was done with music and I was going to go into ministry. It's like that when I hear about Jack White trying to decide if he was going to be a priest or a musician. And I feel like even God was like, you made the right choice. Right. I just picked up the guitar after I hadn't played it in almost 2 years. And I wrote a song for, I think it was my pastor's wife's birthday, and I wrote and recorded that song, and just had a bunch of songs that I had written over the years. And a friend of mine from church demoed all of them for me, and he just pulled me aside and he said, "Dude, you're a thief." It's like, "What do you mean I'm a thief?" He's like, "You have a gift that I haven't seen in a lot of people. And you are doing a disservice to people by not sharing your music and your songs with the world." So that really lit the fire. And then from there, I wouldn't say like a falling away with the church, but I just had some traumatic things happen there that led me to really wanting to kind of get away from the scenario and gain some fresh perspective on my life. And my sister was living in Gainesville, Texas at the time, working at WinStar World Casino. So I packed up my car, got down to Texas, got a job at a casino, and started writing lyrics on my little notepad that I kept so I could have information while I was cashing out old ladies like slot machine jackpots. I'd have to write down their info so I could go and get their money. And then, these security guards would follow me. Well, I had like $30,000. I'm giving this lady who's chain smoking Virginia Slims. And I thought, well, man, if she can come in here and make 30 grand, throwing $100 bill into a slot machine, I feel like my odds at making a living at music have got to be better than this. Yeah. So, and I was working the graveyard shift. I was working like 9 o'clock at night until 6 or 7 in the morning. I'd come home and sleep for a few hours. And if I didn't feel inspired to write, I'd just watch movies all day, take a nap, and then go back to work. Or if I felt inspired, I would write. And then the drummer I met, who was playing at the church, playing drums for the church I went to, his dad was a pastor of the church, and his best friend was a killer bass player. And then Shannon lived up in Michigan, and she's kind of always been my editor. And so I was just sending her songs, and she'd be like, that one sucks. That one's cool. That one sucks. It was a lot of that. This song isn't very good. And we started from there, and we never looked back. I remember it was in Gainesville, Texas, sitting in Dave's like 1999 Ford Explorer. And we're like, in less than 2 years, we're going to have a record deal, and we're going to be touring all over the world. And it was about 2 years from that time that we sort of woke up in Australia playing festivals, and it was really surreal. That's kind of how it all started.
Nice. What led to the name being Mike Mains and the Branches?
Yeah, that was like, in almost like a very prophetic, like Old Testament sense. There was a guy that used to come. He was like a traveling minister that came to the church that I was involved with, and our band was originally called We His Branches, which is just the worst band name I think I've ever heard of. But for some reason, I kept feeling like I don't think the band name should be that, and I don't know what it should be. And I talked to this minister who was kind of a mentor to me. And he's like, it shouldn't be We His Branches. It should be your name. Call it like Mike Mains and the Branches or whatever you want. And he's like, Shannon will remain, but all of the other members will be in flux. Like, people are just going to come and go. And that's kind of part of the way that it's set up, is for you to have musicians come and play with you, and then they'll go and start their own career. And an example of that is like, we took my buddy Jason Singer in this band called Michigander out on one of his very first tours. And now he's gone on and toured with Manchester Orchestra and is absolutely killing it. And he's like the coolest little brother I could ever ask for. And he's just a brilliant songwriter and musician. So I'm glad that I did that. The folks that were objecting to that are no longer with me. So I'm glad that I went with my guns on that one.
Casually throw all my dreams away. Love's not some ship you sail on. You when you're feeling passionate, you're in it. So get some courage, kid, and why don't you grow up?
What was inspiring you musically early on? Like, was it just kind of a natural progression of how the band formed, or were there things like inspiring you as a writer?
When the band first started, and in some ways it remains, I guess I would just, the adjectives I would use to describe it would change. Like when the band first started, I felt this, it reminds me a lot of like what I hear about like U2 starting, where it was like they were a part of this really spiritual experience in Ireland, and in Dublin, and they felt the best way that they could honor that was to write songs that, you know, expressed what it meant to be human. And so we're a part of this, you know, this church. Well, I guess backing up, I'm writing songs at a casino, and I'm seeing sort of like the worst aspects of humanity, right? People are not, for the most part, going to a casino and leveraging their mortgage on a game of blackjack on the best day of their life, right? So I'm seeing that, and that's bringing up all of these stories and all of this inspiration in me. At the same time, I'm struggling with a porn addiction, and which is kind of part of what led me to going away and getting help, which I shared with that on my socials last December. So I'm sort of seeing people at their best and at their worst. I'm experiencing this like addiction that I'd kind of carried with me since my early childhood, and trying to process it through music. I'd had a near suicide attempt that inspired the song Drifter, which I wrote the morning after that happened. It was on our first album, Home. And so it was that, and then there was like this part of me that was so pissed off at my dad, who, you know, never said I could make it. I'd never amount to anything, especially if I didn't do music. And it was just like, dude, let me show you how wrong you are, bro. Like, I was angry at him because I felt like he'd spent his whole life playing it safe and still, you know, he didn't seem happy. And I just thought, man, if he can fail at playing it safe, I'd rather fail doing what I love or have a chance at success, you know? And so there's like this angsty boy trying to prove my dad wrong. There's this kid struggling with an addiction and growing up and around this branch of spirituality that had a lot of shame baked into it, and not really knowing how to deal with that. I'm also falling in love with my best friend that was one of the founding members of the band. And so all of the songs, especially off of the first album, were an expression of that. And then we struggled for a long time trying to figure out what the band or the album would be called. But Home did feel like a nice, you know, bow to tie around it, because ultimately, and I think this is still true for me as an artist, like I have a lyric off of our upcoming album, Memory Unfixed. The first song is called Lost Boys, and the lyric from the chorus of that song is, I am a long way from who I could have been. And I still feel that way. I felt that way when I made our first record. I feel that way now, and I think I'm learning that's part of the human experience is that feeling, that emotion, and trying to hold space for it without it fully derailing you.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
But yeah, that was kind of the inspiration in the early days, and I feel like in much the same way it still is.
Nice. It's a lot of like darkness and complexity wrapped up in these like indie pop songs.
Yeah, man. I mean, one of my favorite quotes is Tom Waits. He said, I love beautiful melodies telling me terrible things.
Yeah.
And that's what I've found in a lot of, you know, Me Without You's out music. I found that in City's Burn. I found that in a lot of kind of the emo wave of the early aughts, a lot of emotional boys singing about their daddy issues.
Yeah. What's Pedro the Lion? I don't remember what the song is on Winners Never Quit, but it's like this poppy chorus where it's like da 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 da, and the song's about like murdering his wife. It's like,
yeah, man. Yeah.
So fucked up.
Yeah.
After you guys did the second record, you ended up doing Audio Tree Live in there. How'd that come about?
Oh man. I think they had reached out. We had a friend that was a promoter friend from Michigan, Nate Duro, really amazing human being. I think, I can't remember if he works with Audio Tree anymore or not. But he got that connection for us. That was fun, but I can't go back and watch that. When I look back on it, I get cringy. I feel like I didn't perform well, and I felt like I didn't sing very well. So I'm thankful to have that feather in my cap. Yeah. But also really praying that they'll let us come back and do another session in the future. And then they can just take the other one off. But we've had fans who really enjoy it, so I'm glad someone does.
In the morning over coffee, threw my heart on the table, told you what I've done in the dark. You felt far away. I was gonna be a shelter, held you while you fell asleep. We were in the back of my car, before you were far away. Now that
what led you guys to Tooth and Nail Records?
I would say, I'm a product of what I would consider kind of the golden era for that label. Early 2000s to mid 2000s. And for me, I never really desired or thought about being on a major album. I would say that the idea of like how big a band could be, it just wasn't on my radar. Like I just thought it would be so cool to be on Tooth and Nail. That was for the longest time the dream label. And we just thought no one's really going to care or take us seriously until, we're out there making noise. And so we made our first record, started touring. And then it felt like we were putting on really great live shows. So there was a bit of a buzz happening around our band. And then, Adam, who's been an A&R guy for Tooth and Nail for well over a decade now, probably, came and saw our show at Cornerstone. And that was like a Cornerstone, again, like to a kid who grew up, and graduated high school in the early 2000s, like, which is just wild to think like we're talking 23 years ago now. Yeah. Like that was Mecca, like I think in their heyday, Cornerstone was having like 70,000 people out a year. So it's like, we want to be on one of the biggest and best labels that is affiliated with like our dream festival of playing. And we went and played, and the tent was empty, man, empty. And then we get through like half of our first song, and there's like 2,000 people under the tent, and Adam is standing side stage. And, so that's kind of where it all started. And that was just really, really crazy and cool. But we never ended up like working with them on our first two albums. I've always been, maybe to a fault, really protective of my music rights. Like I own all my publishing still. I own all of my masters, and it just took me a really long time to want to consider parting ways with that. And so we created, it's basically called a licensing deal, where they're essentially renting the rights to my music for a period of time, and I'm really grateful for them, for that, because not all artists are fortunate enough to have that kind of a deal, and I'm grateful they were willing to do that with me.
And I think at the time, like, had you guys signed with Calm Down, it was, I don't remember if it was right before, right after, sometime in there where they part ways with EMI, Capital Christian, whatever, and like it upended the whole label, and like basically every artist got dropped, and it was like a rebuilding. So you exist in this new space where like CD sales at Christian bookstores aren't a thing. Tooth and Nail exist in this space where they could just release whatever they want, and they're not beholden to a Christian market, and like there's more freedom with the label, it feels like.
Yeah, and they seem really supportive of our mission. Like I am a person who, I went to Italy, and I went to Assisi, Italy, and I would identify primarily as a Franciscan, and so my faith is a vital part of my humanity. But I've always hated the idea of commodifying someone's like worldview or religious view and like duct taping it to their music or their genre. So we've been really adamant about avoiding that as much as we can. Although the doors that swung wide open for us in the early days of our band, I think, predominantly because of what I was writing about and singing about, were in that world. And as soon as that started happening, I realized, man, I feel like if I'm not careful, I'm going to climb to the top of a ladder that's besides the one I really want to be on. If I believe from a spiritual perspective that walking in love and walking in truth and constant forgiveness are virtues that will have a healthy impact on human beings, if I'm siloing myself inside of one small demographic, I'm preventing my music from bringing healing to people who share a different worldview. And this particular release, I really feel that they've been very supportive of that, which has been cool.
Nice. Yeah. The album is called Memory Unfixed. I want to talk about a specific song. Could you talk to me about Losing My Head and the inspiration behind that song? Like, it just struck a chord with me as somebody who kind of like all the shit that happened with like the 2016 election and like COVID and kind of coming out of lockdown, sober but more agnostic than I was before. Like, it struck a chord with me, so.
Yeah, man. That's my favorite song from the album. When George Floyd was murdered, it just really set something off in me. And I think the response that I saw in a lot of like Christian culture, I just felt was so appalling. Like as a follower of Christ, I just could not just sit and I couldn't just be an observer. Like at a certain point, silence is essentially just giving license. By being silent, you're consenting, and I just couldn't, and I was mad as hell. And I think too, at that time during COVID, we were supposed to go on the road. I was kind of in the very, very like beginning stages of what was going to become a very rapid and a very painful, like negative downward spiral for me. And where that really began was in COVID, seeing what was happening with, of course, the election, and then George Floyd, but at the same time, like how isolated we all were at that time. For me, we had moved down to Nashville because I had really found a lot of success in writing songs for other artists and for like TV shows, movies, films, cinema, that kind of a thing. And again, it kind of became this we just bought our dream home. We just moved to Nashville, but I still feel like my band is a failure. And so there's this feeling of like, no matter what I do, no matter what I accomplish, I was feeling like I wasn't enough. Like I just shared, my dream was to get signed to Tooth and Nail and tour. I did it, you know what I mean? And yet I still wasn't happy. I want to move to Nashville and buy a house and make a living doing music. I did it, and I still wasn't happy. So all of that is kind of having a head-on collision inside of me, and I'm struggling with insomnia. I'm having panic attacks, and really thinking like, I don't know if I fully prescribe to or buy into this, like this idea anymore. Like if this version of like religion or spirituality that is kind of the mainstream thing that you're selling me is cool with like killing people who don't look like you, is cool with systemic racism, well then fuck this and I want no part of it. I was just really angry. And so, you know, I think the other part too, like the second verse is really, I mean, I'm a kid who I read the book Love Wins by Rob Bell, and it changed my life. And I think there are a lot of people who would think I'm a heretic for that, and good for you. I write songs because it's how I get through life. I don't really care what people think for the most part. But this idea that I think I was really like sticking a middle finger up at like this issue with religion in general, like kind of the capital R of religion, but then also very specifically Christianity, which is this idea that God is all loving, and you were like beautifully and wonderfully knit in your mother's womb. Also, welcome to planet Earth, and you're going to go to hell forever because you're a piece of shit. I'm like, hold on a second, man. Like, I'm not a parent. I don't have kids yet, and yet I can't imagine there is anything my child could do. I'm talking anything, like being in prison for the most atrocious crimes. I don't think there's anything my child could do that would ever make me fully give up on them permanently, let alone like for the rest of time, forever and ever. And so I think the machinery of religion and the way that it's just sort of dissolved into a fear-mongering experience where it's like, do you believe what I believe? Okay, well, if you don't, you're going to go into this fiery furnace forever. God loves you, but like, unless you follow the rules, then you're done. And I just thought, so that's really what it's about, is like behaving correctly so that we can avoid this thing that we're afraid of. I thought that love casted out all fear. I thought that God was love, and I thought that Jesus didn't come to condemn the world, but that the world would know that it is loved through him. So, yeah, man, I mean, there's a lot of anger in there, you know, and I would say it's like almost a punk rock Franciscan sort of energy that I'm bringing to it. I think it was Richard Rohr who said, he was quoting, I think, Saint Bonaventure, who is a Scottish monk, I believe. And he said, perhaps Jesus didn't come to change God's mind about humanity. It didn't need to be changed. Maybe he came to change our mind about God. And that really opened up a lot of doors for me, because I see in, expressed in Buddha, I see expressed in Taoism, and I see it expressed in the crucifixion, a way to respond to the rent we all pay as human beings, which is pain. And to me, in Christ in particular, I see surrender. I don't see this sort of like misogynistic, rich white guy that is peddled throughout a lot of the congregations in the South in the United States.
Yeah.
I think I've made myself pretty clear on that one.
Yeah. There's definitely like it feels confessional too, or there's that line like the things I don't admit to my Christian or religious friends. Like it's very confessional in that way. And as like a parent, like there's that notion of like you're born sinful. See my daughter she's almost 9, and she's like the most like bleeding heart, like why don't people just help homeless people? Like why do people have to live on the street? It's like there's nothing bad about her. She wasn't born bad or sinful, right?
Yeah. I think we have more to learn from children than they have to learn from us.
Yeah.
It seems to me they're oh man, I wish I could remember the quote, but I think it was like some Oprah was sharing about like this little boy was at home and his parents just came back from the hospital, and with his little sister, and like I think they had like a baby monitor in the room or something, and he went into the room and she like had just woken up and he's like, hey, tell me everything that you know about where you came from, because I'm starting to forget. And I think that there's just so much magic to that, like I don't know that we're here to have it all figured out. I think it's a gift, and let's be kind to each other. And the most honest thing that I can say is I have no idea what happens on the other side of the river, but I do think being kind and caring, and doing the very best that you can to recover from the damage that you've done, recover from the damage that's been done to you, teach others to do the same, and walk in love and truth and forgiveness. That's a hill I'm willing to die on.
You were standing on the porch, I was out in the rain. Caught you dancing in your mother's dress. Felt the lightning in your veins. I had everything owned in a bag in the back of my car. You left a note on the TV set.
Where'd the concept for the album artwork come from?
That was our friend Anna Nunez. She did the album artwork for When We Were in Love as well, and her husband Jesus just became very close friends of ours, and we just love and adore them. Jesus, her husband, is just one of the funniest human beings you'll ever meet. Like I feel like anytime I'm in a room with him, I'm hyperventilating. I'm laughing so hard. But her art really speaks to me, and the painting of Memory Unfixed it's in our house. It's in our living room, and when we had the record finished, the record was probably done in early 2021. And we couldn't figure out what it should be called. We couldn't figure out what the art or the concept should be. And then I just saw Anna post something about it online, and I was like, Memory Unfixed. Shoot, dude, that's it. And that's the album cover. Yeah. So I reached out to her, and we bought it, and she said we could use it as the album artwork.
Nice.
Yeah.
Well, the album is out September 15th. What's the rest of the year look like for the band?
Man, we head out today, my friend. We're going on tour all of August. We come back, catch our breath in September, and get ready for tour with King's Kaleidoscope this fall. And I'm really, really excited about that. I hear nothing but great things about them. I've seen them live. I'm a massive fan, so I'm honored to be sharing the stage with them.
Awesome. Thanks for listening to As the Story Grows. Our intro music was written and composed by Jeremy Hunt. The As the Story Grows theme is by Bob Nana. If you like what you hear, subscribe wherever you get your podcasts and give us a rating and review. If you'd like to support the show financially, you can join us at patreon.com/asthestorygrows. Be a part of our community and join the ongoing conversation over on Discord. If you enjoy this episode, share it on social media with your friends. Much appreciated, and thanks for listening.
I never felt so young and alive as when I'm diving into a tomb. And now I'm learning as I live.